Good evening and welcome to the City of Glendale's Civil Service Commission for October 23rd, 2013. May I please have roll call?
Commissioner Yakubian?
Present.
Commissioner Devine?
Here.
Commissioner Hatamian?
Here.
Commissioner Manukian?
Yes.
And Chair Kazarian.
Here. Next item, please.
Minutes.
Move to approve, dispense from reading.
Second.
Unanimous consent. Thank you. Next item, please.
Oral communications.
I have a card before me from Charles Goldwasser. There you are. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Charles Goldwasser. My address is 5858 Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. I'm here on behalf of Glendale Police Sergeant Fahak Mardikian. I sent a letter to the Commission on October 11, 2013. I don't know if it was distributed to you, but in that letter I ask that the Commission consider making further order in their hearing regarding his demotion from police sergeant to police officer, or in the alternative to grant a new hearing. The basis for the claim, and I don't actually think it's articulated as well in this letter as it could be, that's why I came over to speak to you this evening. The basis for the claim is that at the time of the transfer, Sergeant Mardikian was told that it was non-disciplinary in nature, and that I emphasize that because that's the distinction between the type of action that provides for a Civil Service Commission hearing and the type of action that provides for something less than a Civil Service Commission hearing. Okay?
I'm sorry, do we have a copy of that letter? Did anybody get it?
I have a copy of that.
Oh, you
letter.
have a copy. Okay.
To clarify, Mr. Goldwasser, I believe you sent a letter to Mr. Doyle. Is that correct?
No, I sent it to the Commission. Mr. Doyle, for reasons unbeknownst to me, took it into his, well, he responded. He responded in detail, and so I figured I better come over and speak to you. He responded by telling me that it is not something that the Commission will hear. And I disagree with that. I think that the Commission has the power and, in fact, the obligation to hear anything that's brought before it, even if you end up, as a Commission, telling me that you don't want to hear it or don't have the jurisdiction. And that's why I came over to speak to you.
Okay. If I may ask another question. Is it your contention that the disciplinary hearing that has taken place and has been concluded and resulted in a written finding to be issued by this body, in your opinion, needs further clarification because of some action that you think was not addressed by this Commission, or is this some entirely new matter that you are bringing before the Commission?
This is not an entirely new matter, no, sir. I think that the Commission, when it heard evidence on the demotion matter,
right?
In effect, it heard the same evidence that was used to justify the transfer, and at that time that was called non-disciplinary. And it just seems internally inconsistent. I read your award, and I know that in your award you acknowledged the non-disciplinary nature of the transfer. However, my understanding, and I have to tell you, I have not read the entire transcript.
Right.
My understanding, though, is that substantially the same matters that were brought forward to justify the non-disciplinary transfer were matters that were put in front of this Commission to justify the demotion. And it just seems to me that if that's the case, how can you say they're non-disciplinary on, day whatever, and use them to impose discipline on day whatever? And I think, at the very least, a review of the transcript, an argument, briefing the issue, I would like that opportunity on behalf of Sergeant Mardikian.
Before I ask you a follow-up question, Commissioner Devine?
Yes, I'd like to ask Ms. Varpetian if we're getting into an area that's beyond our scope at this point, and if so, how this should be more properly handled.
I was actually going to respond to that. I have been monitoring the time. Mr. Goldwasser does have the ability to speak for 5 minutes. But because of the questions that were asked, perhaps you'd extend the time by another minute or so. But the appropriate way to handle that, this isn't something that we can take up at this meeting because it's not a part of this agenda. But if the commission so wishes, you can direct staff to come back to you with perhaps a report on process, the propriety of the commission hearing this matter after it's concluded, or the other options that are available to the commission. That is something that we can report on at a later time, but not today.
I actually did ask that you put it on your calendar and let me know so that it could be done the formal, proper way.
If possible, Chairman, I think I would at least would like to, I'm sure my fellow commissioners would like to get an idea of what this is about. At least to calendar it or get some kind of report so we get a better understanding of.
May I ask something before we do that? I
Sure.
think that, as I've heard today, and I just, very quickly reviewed that letter, I still don't have a full understanding of exactly what it is that you are saying. I think that before the Commission considering the, any further determination with respect to this case, I think we would like a better articulated.
Yeah, because I don't understand what it is that we're being asked to do.
Exactly. I mean, with all due respect, I'm a little confused as to what you're asking us to do, or what you think the inconsistencies are. I mean, I heard why you said that we can't say X and then say X, not X on the next day, but I still don't buy it completely.
And if I just can jump in very quickly, this is the time for oral comment, and again, that there is a time restriction on that. Certainly it is within the chair's purview to extend it.
Thank you.
But you want to keep that in mind.
I'm going to extend it for a couple of minutes because I need to understand that we are on the same page, because I've reviewed your letter and I've reviewed the response to your letter that came from Mr. Doyle as opposed to this body. This body does not engage in letter writing back and forth, as I'm sure you're aware. In an administrative appeal procedure, I believe it was referred to you that performance-based transfers, or transfers that are at the election of the police department from Detective Bureau to field division, if you will, are not subject to the Civil Service Commission rules. They are a different classification that can be reviewed, and as long as it is reasonable, the transfer will be upheld. What appears to me you are suggesting by appearing today is that your belief is that that transfer, though at the election of the police department and though not disciplinary, nevertheless later on at a disciplinary appeal hearing by members of this commission sitting as triers of fact, you believe that the appointing authority referred to that transfer as a ground for sustaining their discipline. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir.
And if you're saying that, I believe you then ought to seek either a reconsideration of the ruling of the commission that ruled on that discipline, and I think you are talking about a 5% reduction in pay based on your letter.
Yes, sir.
But you would agree that the police department has the discretion to take sergeants from field division, place them in Detective Bureau, and then give them the commensurate additional 5%, and then at some point in time, they have the discretion to remove them and put them back into field services and take away the 5% because their work would no longer be 4 days a week, it'd be 3 days a week, correct?
And I think the MOU outlines that completely. I don't dispute that at all.
Okay.
I do dispute whether or not it's done for punishment, punitive purposes, disciplinary action.
Right. And then, so if your client today is in field services, he would not be getting the 5%, would he?
That is correct.
Right.
That's true.
So
Chair
you're-
Kazarian, again, I caution you, this is an oral comment item, and we do need to be careful that it's not an agendized item for us to have that discussion at this time.
I'm aware of that. I'm aware of that. Thank you. Very well. Do you have any parting remarks or intention that you'd like to share with us how to proceed?
No, only that I did, in fact, label this, and you certainly know that labels are nothing more than labels. Request for further order and/or appeal of disciplinary transfer. I think that the Commission has power that they could rectify this problem if, in fact, they find it to be a problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's one other thing I need to tell you. I need a second time. As to this letter, it indicates a copy to the client and a copy to Mr. Zappia. I cannot for sure tell you that Mr. Zappia ever was sent a copy. I thought of that as I was driving over here, and that's something that you need to know.
Okay. I think it also indicates a copy was sent to me, and I did receive it.
Neither
Thank
did
you.
we.
He's referring to his letter.
Oh, his letter.
His-
I see.
his
I
original
apologize.
letter.
I see. But the response was sent to me as chair of this body. Thank you.
I'm aware. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Goldwasser.
Just as Chairman Kazarian, at least as a courtesy, if we can just at least get a copy of that letter so at least we can read it. That's all.
Mine is all marked up, so...
No, I don't want yours.
I was going to ask for the same thing, that all the commissioners get a copy of the letters
And the response.
and the response that
We
you
will.
have prepared. And then, I don't know how the other commissioners feel, but I would be willing to make a motion that we agendize the item so it can be more thoroughly discussed.
So at least we can understand what it is. I'm confused, but I would second that, at least for us to get an understanding of what it is that we're being asked to do.
We don't need a motion on that. I think if there's an interest on the part of the commission, we can certainly bring that back by way of a report as to the process that one would follow in the event that they are unsatisfied with a ruling or feel that the ruling is incomplete in some way.
And you would notify all parties of when it's going to be agendized.
Absolutely.
Anything further? No? Thank you. Next item, please.
Recruitment and examination report.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this item is a note and file, but it's for your review, the current recruitment and examination status of our staff. As you can see, things do appear to be picking up a little bit in the recruitment field. We have lots of activities. You see increase in recruitment in our fire department, water and power, public works, police. We're just coming off of an extensive recruitment for firefighter recruit, which attracted over 3,000 applicants, and Manya and other members of the staff completed a whole week of oral boards of close to 400 candidates interviewed. So we hope to have a nice, good list of candidates for that process, and be able to hire a new recruit academy class around the start of the new year. So with that, if there's any questions you have on any of these items, I'd be happy to try and answer those for you.
Seeing none, next item, please.
Eligible list established.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, again, this is another note and file item, but similar to the previous report, again, you see a relatively long list of eligible lists that have been established since our last meeting. Again, the eligible lists are ultimately the culmination of the recruitment processes. And as you can see, we have some, I believe I counted 17 lists that have been established, some promotional, some open. But it is a good indication to see how challenging our processes are. You have one column, the total number of applications received, and then the column on the right shows the total number who made the list. And as you can see, some of them have very small lists of 1, 2 candidates. So again, an indication of the challenging nature of our recruitment processes. Again, if you have questions on this, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Mr. Doyle. Next item, please.
Advertising expenditures report for the period of July 2013 to September 2013.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is our quarterly advertising expenditure report. This covers the first quarter of the 13-14 fiscal year, from July 1 of 2013 to September 30th. As you can see, the areas that we advertise when we have our jobs that are under recruitment. This report's broken into 3 categories. We have those publications and websites that deal with the various ethnic communities, and as you can see, we try to spread the advertising dollars around fairly evenly. The second grouping is of those more specialized publications, websites that deal with specific professions, and then the third grouping is just the general types of newspapers, websites, the LA Times, the News Press, and entities like that we advertise in. We did spend approximately $3,700 on advertising in the first quarter. Total budget is just a shade under $14,000 for the whole year, so we're approximately on track with keeping within our budget. So, with that, if you have questions, again, be happy to try and answer those for you.
Seeing none, next question. Next item, please.
Class specification for approval, GIS Project Manager Series, and Job Bulletin for approval, Senior GIS Project Manager.
This is a report prepared by Mr. Kwan. Is that it?
Yes.
Mr. Doyle, please.
Yes. Again, what we have are two items here. Two reasons this is before you. One is some minor revisions to the specification for the GIS Project Manager Series, which consists of two jobs. And then the second half of this is really the approval of the job bulletin to go out and recruit for the Senior GIS Project Manager. As you know, we don't bring every bulletin to the Commission for approval, but when we take a position that formerly was done on a promotional basis and move it to an open basis, these types of job bulletins do come before the Commission, and that's the case for this particular process. Again, I referred to the specification as having very minor changes to them, and that's not an understatement. Really, what we've added was the term "other enterprise applications" to many of the different areas of that specification. Really, to even though we're looking for somebody with a GIS background, we hope to find somebody with maybe some broader experience that we could have them manage or oversee some of the other enterprise applications within the IS department. So with that, our recommendation is approval of both of these items. Upon approval, we will put forth a open bulletin for Senior GIS Project Manager. And I forgot to note, on the specification for GIS Project Manager, we did make a modification to the experience requirement. It did say 5 years, and we're making it 3 for reasons unbeknownst to me. We had 5 years for both the manager and the senior manager position. They have roughly the same experience requirement. We're proposing to reduce that one to 3 years for the lower position. This is there aren't a lot of individuals out there in the labor market with this type of experience. So hopefully, if and when we ever recruit for the lower position, it'll just help us broaden our recruitment pool. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Mr. Kwan is here, as is Mr. Ganley, the Chief Information Officer.
Any questions? Any motion?
Second.
Unanimous consent. Thank you. Next item, please.
Class specification for approval, Accounts Payable Technician Series.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, this is a class specification. What we're doing here is creating a specialized series within our finance department addressing accounts payable. And this series is basically consists of 3 classifications: an accounts payable technician 1, 2, and 3, In the past, we filled these positions either with generic clerical type positions or generic accounting related positions, but I think the focus here is to really provide some more specialty in the accounts payable arena. I know it's getting very specific on some of these job requirements, but it does help us recruit for the right people when we go out for these recruitments. Additionally, when we have situations where we're experiencing layoffs and employees are bumping into various positions, it helps to have these specialized series, so we don't end up bumping someone into a field such as this for which they might not have the appropriate background. So for those reasons, again, we hope to you approve this specification series. And again, if you have questions, be happy to try and answer them. We have representatives from the department as well, including Amy Martin from my staff, Mr. Bradford, who's the Deputy Director for Finance.
Any questions? Yes.
I had a couple of quick ones. Is this similar to what we've done before with other classes where we changed the name to protect the position?
I'm not sure, Commissioner Devine, I'm not sure what you mean, change the name, but...
Well, we changed the class specification, the name of the position, in order that someone else could not bump into that with a generic background.
Commissioner Devine, that is one factor in this. We have experienced in our layoff and bumping process the past few years some very challenging situations where people have been bumped into positions for which they're not suited. And I think in general, you'll see throughout the organization a move to make positions more specific and to, at minimum, make sure for a series like this that we have individuals with a strong accounting background. But again, it's a reflection of I think, our need to specialize throughout the organization. And
will the existing accounting services specialists be automatically transferred or moved to these positions, or will there be an open exam or promotional exam for this new classification?
Commissioner Devine, the intent would be to transfer because we have individuals, and these are not promotions or anything like that. These are lateral moves. We're taking the existing positions and basically sliding people over. So it wouldn't be a promotion, no extra money, anything like that.
Okay.
So.
All I had.
That's what you have? I have one question. Any other questions first?
What is Mr. Doyle, what is the salary range for this position? Just wondering, just for my curiosity.
Commissioner Hatamian, I couldn't answer that. Perhaps Ms. Martin may have a general sense.
Maybe Mr. Kwan can answer that.
Mr. Kwan, why are we picking on Mr. Kwan?
I like Mr. Kwan.
Kwan knows everything.
That's right. Ask Kwan.
You know, I used to know the salary of every position in the city. But
What do you want the salary to be?
Just don't ask him for
Just
coffee.
wondering if it's a higher range, mid-range. I'm looking at the educational requirement.
Well, these are non-management level positions, all within the GCEA group, and my sense is they would be, yes, they're non-exempt, and my sense is they would be in the, they would start in the $2,500 per month range for the lowest position, up to the mid, probably low to mid 4,000 for the 3-level position. Am I correct? Okay.
And in the
That's a
past,
month.
we haven't required a bachelor's degree for these positions, or have we in the past?
For these positions, no. This is not the what you would call the professional level series, where that would be a different series where we have an accountant 1, 2, and 3. Those are the folks who have the college degrees and take the more the professional track.
Thank you.
That answers my question. So I don't have a question anymore.
I move for approval.
Second.
All in favor, unanimous consent. Thank you. Next item, please.
Class specification for approval, purchasing series.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is sticking with the Finance Department here, this is a revision to the purchasing series, and this is a little different than the previous one in that we currently have a purchasing or a buyer series in effect already, but what we're doing is adding one additional level, and it's really at the beginning or entry level that we're doing this, and creating this classification title of Buyer 1, which is again, would be an entry level. We have looked at this series and the positions we've had and the individuals we've hired through it over the years, and we found that hiring individuals from the outside, from other organizations at the journey level hasn't been always helpful to us. Our preference would be to take someone at the entry level and sort of mold them into the Glendale way of doing things and our purchasing procedures, which are quite unique from what you would find in the private sector or even other public sector organizations. And that strategy we hope will work a little better and probably save us a little money for the time being. As the individuals do advance, they can in their knowledge and experience, then we can consider promoting them up the chain of command. So that's the primary thing, is to add that Buyer 1 level at the bottom end. The other move we're making within this series is taking that senior buyer classification and taking it from a non-management position and making it to a middle management / professional position. We recently had an audit conducted by an outside firm looking at the Fair Labor Standards Act, and that's basically the federal law which obligates employers to pay overtime for positions that exceed, or for positions that exceed 40 hours in a work week. There are exemptions to the Fair Labor Standards Act for positions that are professional in nature, and this outside firm looked at a variety of our positions throughout the organization, and they keyed in on the senior buyer position and said this should be an FLSA exempt position. And so at the City of Glendale, to make something exempt, we move it from the non-management ranks to the middle management ranks. It's not a tremendous amount of more money. It's really in essence, it probably will save the city money because there won't be an overtime liability should we require the individual to work overtime. But nevertheless, that change is being recommended, and we're certainly following that direction. The audit was done by a law firm which specializes in these types of audits. So those are the primary motivations for the changes in this series. So if you have questions, again, be happy to try and answer them. It's another one that Ms. Martin worked on as well. So,
questions? I have one question. None of the specifications for Buyer 1, 2, or Senior Buyer on to Buyer Supervisor and Purchasing Manager have any educational requirements that I've seen. Did I miss something?
oh yes, Chair Gazarian, they actually do. If you look at the page 2 of this, what we have are a series of knowledges, skills, abilities, and minimum requirements, experience, and education at the front end of this specification that covers all of the positions within that series. So if you see on page 2, education, training, it does require a bachelor's degree in business, or public administration, or a related field for all of them.
All of
Yes.
them?
Yes.
Okay.
And then as you look at Buyer 1, Buyer 2,
Right.
everything slowly escalates as far as where we
I
go.
see, because I noted the education experience on Buyer 1, and underneath it saying no specific requirements.
Yes.
I assumed there is no requirement, but you have correctly set forth in a page prior to that all of the minimum requirements.
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further. Any questions? Any other questions? No?
Move to approve.
Second.
Unanimous consent. Next item, please. Next item.
Class specification for approval, water quality manager.
Mr. Doyle?
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, this is the creation of a new classification title of water quality manager. This is within the water section of Glendale Water Power. This is a position we filled not too long ago, utilizing the title of Senior Environmental Program Specialist. And this is a position, it's actually a series we've had for quite some time. When we did this recruitment, the focus was going to be on water quality. So we conducted that recruitment, and we were fortunate enough to get an individual with an exemplary background in water quality, in testing and monitoring of the water quality. And really, it is a specialty in and of itself, and what we're proposing to do is to reallocate that position to this new title that gets established, water quality manager, because it truly is, at least this candidate that we brought on, it truly is what they work on exclusively. We have other senior environmental program specialists who work in other parts of the city, including our landfill programs and our wastewater programs, which, again, it's a very broad title, but this seems to be the right niche that we want to establish here, and it just makes perfectly good sense to have a water quality manager position of its own. And again, the item that's this is not a cost item. The individual in this position, we hope to transfer them in laterally to the new title, which is, again, more descriptive of what they actually do. So if you have questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them. Ms. Akopian from my staff worked on this. We have representatives from the department as well.
Any questions?
I do have one question. I know, not recently, but within the past year or two, I've been reading that the city has had some issues pertaining to certain contaminants in the water. And I'm just wondering if this applicant has any specialized knowledge and/or if the job bulletin and the job specs would be appropriate to address an individual who has such a background.
So Commissioner Hatamian, you're probably referring to lots of discussion relating to chromium-6, and that's an issue every community that runs its own water distribution has to deal with. I'm going to ask a representative from the department to perhaps address that question, if I may.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Ramon Abueg, Chief Assistant General Manager for Glendale Water and Power. I'm responsible for the Water Department. For Chrome 6, the position that we have for the Water Quality Manager will be participating. The gentleman that we have in position is familiar with the treatment that is required to remove Chrome 6 from water. I think that's your question. And he also participates consistently with the water quality team of individuals from different cities that look at not just Chrome 6, but all the contaminants that we have to deal with in the water system.
Okay, and internally, do you guys have a performance expectation for this individual in regards to addressing, I'm sure you do, the chromium-6 issue within the community?
That's correct. Again, that's just one of probably about 200 or so contaminants that we have to deal with.
Yes.
And on a monthly basis, it provides us a report on where we are with the contamination level. And as recent as August 5th, I believe, we had to present to our GWP Commission. We're required to do an annual reporting on where we are with the contamination levels and whether or not we meet or exceed the standards. And he did that presentation very effectively.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just had one question. I didn't hear, did you mention whether or not there was a pay grade change on this or a lateral transfer?
Commissioner Devine, it would be lateral completely. This is the salary grade for this is going to match the Senior Environmental Program Specialist. It's identical.
I move for approval.
Second.
Unanimous consent? Thank you. Next item, please.
Reports and information, past due employee performance evaluations.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, you have the report of past two evaluations. This is information only. If one wants to read off or commend those departments that have no past due evaluations, that's a prerogative of the Chair. With that, I have no further comments.
Those departments that have no past due may consider themselves commended by the chair and the members of this commission, and those who do not may consider themselves
Shame
encouraged to comply with no past dues. Any
Shame
other
on
comments? No? Thank you. Next item, please.
Agenda forecast.
Mr. Doyle.
Mr. Chair, members of the Commission, the agenda forecast is here for your review. As you can see, it's that time of the year where we're getting to the end of the calendar year. We typically do cancel the second meeting of each month in November. The November one generally falls around the Thanksgiving holiday, and the December second meeting happens to be on December 25th. So we have 2 meetings remaining for the year, and we intend to have many items similar to tonight involving specifications, new job titles, and revisions for those. Plus, as you know, we have some closed session items that are needing to be dealt with. So with that, Mr. Chair, if you have anything you want to add.
I do not, Mr. Devine.
I just wondered, I know we're going to continue one of the closed session items that was scheduled for tonight, and I'm wondering if that can be put on the 11:13 meeting.
Certainly.
That's what the current.
As to the second item, right?
Yes.
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 Yes. Everybody agree? Yeah. Very well.
Okay, also on that, we also have deliberations on a hearing that's ongoing, and I don't know whether that needs to be noticed or not, but we were planning on discussing that at the meeting or after the meeting of 11:13. So I'll ask Ms. Varpetian whether that needs to be noticed or not.
Just the deliberations portion?
Yes.
A closed hearing.
Oh, would you have concluded?
Closed hearing, we're doing deliberations on motions.
Continuation of the motions.
With just the hearing officers?
Yes.
You'd have to follow the hearing process in doing that. So yes, that would be an additional date that we would notice, although we wouldn't ask council to appear because it's only deliberations on the part of the hearing officers. I'm understanding that that's not coming back to the full commission just yet.
No.
Okay. So we will notice that appropriately.
I thought that was that. Okay.
You guys want to have a private moment?
If yes. Right, but that's not today. Right, okay. Thank you. I believe next item, please, is in order.
Civil Service Commission staff comments.
Any comments? Seeing none, thank you. Ms. Varpetian, is this when
We will read the item, the closed session item into the record, and then we will go off camera, and then we will go into closed session.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Closed session, A, public employee appointment, appeal of background disqualification, and B, public employee discipline deliberations.
As I understand it, item B has been taken off calendar. It'll come back at a future time. So the only remaining item on our agenda now is item A.
That is correct. Thank you. This will conclude our televised portion of this evening's proceedings.